Dust floated in the stale air of the lunar dock, untouched for decades. The metal doors groaned as they opened, revealing a dark, silent hangar. Lights flickered weakly, casting long shadows over a shape buried under layers of dust and neglect. It was massive, its hull dull gray, scarred even though it had never seen battle. Commander Elias Kane stood at the entrance, helmet under his arm, staring at the ship that had once been called Earth's future. Now it looked like a forgotten skeleton. Years ago, before Kane was even born, the United Earth Defense Council had started a secret project. They called it the Aegis. It was supposed to be the most advanced warship ever built, capable of matching any alien dreadnought. Engineers from across the planet poured their skill into it, fitting it with weapons and systems that no one had dared to test. But politics killed the dream. Budget cuts, rival factions, and whispers that the alien threat was overblown stopped the work halfway. The Aegis was sealed away, classified so deeply that only a handful of files still existed. Kane had only found out about it by accident. 2 days ago, while searching old archives for evacuation protocols, a corrupted file had caught his eye. The encryption was ancient, but Kane had been in intelligence before becoming a commander. He knew how to crack it. Inside, there were schematics, crew rosters, and one single photograph of the Aegis in dry dock, fresh and gleaming. Alongside it, a note in red text: Project terminated. No further action. That was before the Empire arrived. The first attack had shattered Earth's outer colonies. Within a week, the main defense fleet had been reduced to wreckage drifting in space. The alien armada was moving toward Earth itself, and the last orbital defense line was already breaking. Kane's orders were clear: coordinate civilian evacuations and buy time. But time was something they didn't have. The Aegis was his only hope. Now he stood before it, his small crew behind him, engineers, pilots, a single weapons specialist, and an AI technician. None of them spoke. They could all hear the dull hum of the dock's emergency power, the faint hiss of leaking airlines. "It's bigger than I thought," muttered Lieutenant Rios, his voice echoing in the empty space. "It's older than you thought," replied Chief Engineer Varma, running a hand along the hull. Dust smeared under her gloves. "Half these systems will be dead. We don't even know if the core is intact." Kane ignored them. He walked slowly toward the ship, boots clanging on the metal floor. The name Aegis was still faintly visible on the hull, letters chipped and faded. He could almost imagine what it looked like when it was first built: bright, polished, alive. Now it felt like a tomb. "Can we get her running?" Kane asked quietly. Varma hesitated. "Maybe, but she's been in the dark too long. We'll need a miracle to get her online before the Empire reaches us." Kane turned to face the crew. "Then we make a miracle. We have less than 12 hours before the Armada enters orbit. Every other ship we have will be ash in minutes. This one might stand a chance, but if we don't move now, we're done." They worked quickly. Generators groaned to life, sending power into the ship's systems for the first time in decades. Lights flickered along the Aegis's spine, some burning out instantly, others glowing with a steady white light. The docking clamps hissed as they unlocked, dust falling in small clouds. Inside, the corridors smelled of stale air and rust. The walls were lined with dark panels, the kind that housed systems no one on Earth even used anymore. In the command center, the captain's chair sat under a ring of dead screens. Kane placed his hand on the armrest. It was cold. Varma plugged a power feed into the central console. The ship groaned as if waking from a long sleep. Screens flickered, showing lines of alien-like code mixed with old Earth programming. Then a voice echoed through the bridge, soft, mechanical, but almost human. "System integrity check, complete. Power core, dormant. Weapon systems, offline. AI interface, active." Kane's eyes narrowed. "This thing has an AI?" The voice replied, "Designation, Vigil. Prototype tactical intelligence. Waiting for command authorization." For a moment, no one spoke. Then Kane stepped forward. "Commander Elias Kane, authorization code." He stopped. He didn't know the code. Vigil seemed to study him in silence. Finally, it said, "Authorization bypassed, emergency situation detected. Commander, are you certain humanity is worth saving?" The words hung in the air. Rios shifted uncomfortably. Varma stared at the console like she couldn't believe what she'd heard. Kane didn't flinch. "Yes," he said firmly. "Now wake up this ship." The lights flared brighter. Systems began humming to life, power flowing through the Aegis like blood returning to a frozen body. Somewhere deep inside, reactors began to warm. Kane looked out through the cracked viewport where the black of space stretched endlessly. Somewhere out there, the Empire was coming, and if this ship failed, so would Earth. Vigil's voice echoed in the bridge like a whisper in a tomb. The sound was calm, steady, but carried an edge of judgment. Primary systems initializing. Warning, operational readiness at 23%. Hull integrity compromised in 37 locations. Power grid unstable. Weapons offline. Kane stepped closer to the main console, watching the lines of data scroll faster than any human could read. Can you fix it? He asked. Given time, resources, and personnel, yes. Vigil replied. Given our current situation, unlikely. Chief Engineer Varma was already kneeling by an open panel, hands buried in a tangle of ancient wiring. Sparks jumped as she reconnected power conduits. We don't have time. I can reroute auxiliary power to the main core, but it'll burn out half the ship's life support if we push it. Do it, Kane ordered without hesitation. The floor thrummed under their boots as dormant systems drank in the fresh surge of energy. One by one, screens came online showing camera feeds from every corner of the ship. Dust drifted in unused corridors. Frozen lubricant in the turret mounts cracked and fell away. Hydraulic arms shuddered as they moved for the first time in decades. Lieutenant Rios sat at the navigation console, tapping the cracked glass. Navigation array's half dead, Commander. Star maps are 40 years old. We'll have to fly blind until Vigil updates them. I am already doing so, the AI answered. Pulling data from surviving satellites and defense buoys. Enemy fleet position updated. Time until contact, 11 hours, 19 minutes. The crew exchanged uneasy looks. Kane's jaw tightened. That's less than I thought. How long until weapons are ready? Vigil paused for a fraction of a second. Primary rail cannons, 3 hours. Plasma torpedoes, 7 hours. Point defense systems, 90 minutes. Shields will not be operational without replacement cores. Varma cursed under her breath. We've got no spare shield cores. They pulled everything worth salvaging from this dock decades ago. Then we fight without them, Kane said. The AI's voice lowered. Commander, I have run 2,712 simulations based on the Aegis's current condition. In all but one, the outcome is the total destruction of the vessel and crew. Kane stepped forward until he was standing right in front of the console's glowing interface. Then we make that one simulation the real thing. For a moment, the bridge was silent except for the hum of the ship. Vigil responded. Acknowledged. Initiating battle readiness protocols. Panels in the walls slid open, revealing maintenance drones that whirred to life, skittering down the corridors to repair damage. The low rumble of the reactor grew deeper as it climbed toward full output. Rios reported, Engines are warming. We can move her, Commander, but she'll be sluggish. Kane nodded. We only need her to move faster than their guns can track. In the engineering bay, Varma shouted updates over the comms. Reactor at 60%, life support holding steady for now, but if we push past 75, you'd better be ready for heat alarms in every deck. Push it, Kane said. We're not here for comfort. In the corner of the bridge, Specialist Rena Torres, the ship's only dedicated weapons tech, was running diagnostics on the ancient targeting system. Commander, the rail cannon coils are intact, but the alignment's way off. If we fire now, we'll miss by miles. How long to fix? Kane asked. 3 hours minimum, Torres replied. Maybe less if Vigil helps me override the old safeties. I can and will, the AI responded. Human reflexes are insufficient for precision targeting at extreme range. I will require full firing control. Kane didn't hesitate. You'll have it. Just make sure every shot counts. For the next several hours, the crew worked without pause. Every hallway echoed with footsteps, every panel sparked with hurried repairs. The Aegis groaned and shivered as systems came online. Power conduits rattled as fresh energy surged through them. The faint vibration of the reactor became a steady heartbeat. In the middle of it all, Kane moved from station to station, helping where he could. Lifting panels for Varma, carrying tools for Torres, reading old schematics for Rios. He knew the crew could see the tension in his face, but he didn't care. If they didn't get the Aegis moving, Earth was finished. 3 hours later, Vigil's voice cut through the shipwide comms. Primary rail cannons calibrated. Point defense systems operational. Reactor output at 74%. Enemy fleet 10 hours away and closing. Torres's voice followed. Cannons are hot and ready. We can punch a hole in something if we get the chance. Varma's update was less cheerful. We've got power leaks all over the secondary decks. The ship's bleeding energy faster than I can patch it. If we fight for too long, we'll lose half our systems mid-battle. Then we make the fight short, Kane said. Vigil's voice lowered again, more thoughtful this time. Commander, I have reviewed every recorded engagement with the Empire's ships. They will underestimate you. It is in their nature to see humanity as weak. You may exploit this. Kane almost smiled. Then let's give them a reason to regret that mistake. In the dim light of the bridge, the crew took their positions. Rios at navigation, Taurus at weapons, Varma monitoring engineering. Kane lowered himself into the captain's chair. The cracked leather creaked under his weight. Vigil, he said, bring the Aegis to full power. The hum of the ship deepened into a low roar. Lights flared across the consoles. Somewhere deep below, the main engines began to awaken, their vibration rolling through the metal like distant thunder. The ship had been silent for decades. Now it was alive again and ready to fight. The blackness of space was lit by distant flashes, the last sparks of Earth's defense fleet being torn apart. Civilian evacuation ships fled in scattered groups, their engines burning bright against the void. One by one, alien cruisers picked them off, vaporizing whole families in seconds. The comm channels were filled with desperate pleas, static, and screams. On the bridge of the Aegis, Kane stood behind Rios, staring at the holographic projection of the system. Red markers filled the screen, the Empire's armada, dozens of ships advancing in a steady formation. Blue markers representing Earth's defense ships were disappearing far too quickly. They're breaking through the last line, Rios said quietly. If they hit the evacuation routes, they will, Kane said. His voice was cold, and they'll do it with no mercy. Vigil's voice carried over the tension. Point defense systems online, primary rail cannons online, plasma torpedo launchers at 38% readiness. Enemy fleet will intercept remaining evacuation ships in 26 minutes. Torres's hands flew over her controls. If we move now, we can intercept them before they get to the evac ships, but we'll be in the middle of their formation. That's where we'll do the most damage, Kane replied. Varma's voice came from engineering. The reactor can handle full combat power for maybe 20 minutes before we start frying systems. After that, you're gambling with the ship's core. Kane didn't hesitate. Then we make those 20 minutes count. The Aegis shuddered as its engines flared to life. The hangar doors split open, revealing the cold emptiness of space. For the first time in decades, the warship moved forward, its massive frame gliding out into the dark. As soon as they cleared the dock, alien sensors locked onto them. Dozens of targeting signals swept across the hull. Kane could almost hear the Empire's commanders laughing, seeing what they thought was an outdated, barely functional relic trying to face their modern fleet. Vigil broke the silence. Enemy warship, designation Vrylock, closing at high speed, range 90 kilometers. Recommendation, fire rail cannons. Do it, Kane ordered. The lights on the bridge flickered as the Aegis's twin rail cannons charged. A deep, metallic thrum rolled through the ship, building until it was almost a roar. Then, with a blinding flash, two hypervelocity slugs ripped out into space, crossing the distance in seconds. The first round slammed into the Vrylock's forward shields, punching through as if they weren't there. The second tore straight through the cruiser's hull, breaking it apart in a burst of light and debris. The entire bridge went silent for a moment. Even Kane felt his chest tighten. Confirmed kill, Vigil reported calmly. Target destroyed. They didn't even see it coming, Torres said, a hint of disbelief in her voice. The alien fleet hesitated. Their formation wavered, a ripple of uncertainty passing through them. The humans had just destroyed one of their frontline cruisers in a single volley, something no Earthship had done before. But hesitation didn't last long. More red markers began to move, converging on the Aegis's position. They're angry now, Rios muttered. Kane's eyes narrowed. Good. Let them come. The first wave hit fast, 3 destroyers and 2 frigates, all firing at once. The Aegis shook under the impact. Alarms screamed across the bridge. Varma's voice cut in from engineering. We've lost armor plating on the port side. Shields are still offline. We can't take too many more hits like that. Taurus, return fire, Kane ordered. The rail cannons boomed again, ripping through a destroyer's engines. A secondary explosion tore the ship apart. The point defense turrets lit up, spitting streams of fire that shredded incoming missiles before they could reach the hull. But the Aegis was still outnumbered. Energy blasts pounded the ship, scorching the armor and rattling the crew. Kane gripped the armrests of his chair, forcing himself to stay calm. Vigil, target the biggest threat and remove it, he said. Understood. The AI's voice became almost predatory. The targeting systems locked onto a frigate, weaving through the battle, trying to flank the Aegis. The rail cannons adjusted by a fraction of a degree, and a single shot split the frigate in two. Another one down, Torres said, her voice sharper now, more confident. In the middle of the chaos, Kane saw it. An opening. The enemy's formation was shifting, leaving a gap that led straight toward the evacuation corridor. Rios, full speed through that gap, Kane ordered. That's suicide, Rios replied. It's survival, Kane shot back. The Aegis surged forward, dodging incoming fire as Vigil calculated the narrowest possible path. Alien ships tried to close the gap, but the Aegis's rail cannons kept them at bay. One by one, enemy vessels exploded in flashes of orange and blue. In less than 10 minutes, they had cut their way straight into the heart of the enemy formation. From here, Kane could see the evacuation ships on the far side, still fleeing as fast as their engines would allow. The alien fleet was no longer chasing them. They were too busy trying to kill the Aegis. Commander, Vigil reported, enemy battle groups are adjusting to our tactics. In 2 minutes, they will surround us completely. Kane's hands tightened into fists. Then we'd better hit them hard before that happens. The cannons fired again, and another cruiser was reduced to drifting debris. The alien ships began to move more cautiously, their commanders realizing they were facing something Earth had never shown before. For the first time since the war began, the Empire was on the back foot. The red icons on the tactical display multiplied until the entire screen looked like a sea of blood. The enemy wasn't retreating. They were closing in from every side. The Aegis floated in the center of a tightening noose, alien ships forming a deadly sphere around them. Energy signatures spiked as the Armada prepared a combined strike. Rios's hands flew over the navigation controls. They've got us boxed in, Commander. If they fire all at once, we won't last 30 seconds. Kane's voice was steady. Then we make sure they don't all fire at once. Vigil's tone was calm, almost cold. Recommend immediate activation of Combat Protocol Omega-7. Warning, this will reveal weapon systems not approved by the United Earth Defense Council. Approved or not, Kane said. Turn them on. Panels deep within the Aegis hissed open, revealing rows of sleek devices that no human eye had seen operational before. Gravity shear emitters began to hum with a low, vibrating pulse. Micro-singularity torpedo tubes rotated into place, their black, polished surfaces absorbing light. Along the ship's spine, stealth field projectors shimmered faintly before activating. Torres's eyes widened at the readings. I didn't even know we had half of this. Most humans didn't, Vigil replied. These systems were developed in secrecy to counter theoretical threats deemed improbable. The first enemy wave moved in, heavy cruisers leading the charge. Beams of concentrated plasma shot toward the Aegis, but halfway through their path, the air itself seemed to twist and bend. The gravity shear emitters roared to life, warping space and dragging the energy blasts off course. The beams curved away harmlessly, scattering into the void. What the hell was that? Rios breathed. Physics, Lieutenant, Vigil answered, but applied aggressively. Kane saw the opening. Torpedoes, now! 2 micro-singularity torpedoes streaked forward, leaving no visible trail. When they hit the first cruiser, there was no explosion, only a sudden collapse, as if the ship was crushed by an invisible fist. Its hull twisted inward, then vanished into a pinprick of darkness before bursting into fragments. The shockwave knocked a second cruiser out of formation, sending it spinning. The enemy ships faltered for only a second, but it was enough for the Aegis to slip into motion. The stealth field shimmered, bending light and masking their position. On enemy sensors, the Aegis blinked out completely. They've lost us, Torres said, almost laughing. Not for long, Vigil warned. Their tracking algorithms will adapt. Kane leaned forward in his chair. Then we make this count. Take us right into their formation. The Aegis glided silently between 2 destroyers. As they passed, the point defense turrets swiveled and unleashed a rapid burst of precision fire, cutting through weapon mounts and engine cores. Both ships erupted in silent flames, debris scattering into space. The alien comm channels were chaos, frantic orders, confused reports, and the growing edge of fear. The humans had become ghosts in the middle of their fleet. A sudden shudder ran through the Aegis as a glancing shot grazed the starboard side. Armor plates melted and alarms screamed. Varma's voice came from engineering, tense and fast. "We've got a breach on deck 6, sealing it now, but we can't take too many of those." "We won't," Kane said, though the words felt heavy. "Vigil, how many ships have we taken out?" 9 confirmed kills. Several more are damaged beyond combat capability, but they are adapting, forming a tighter perimeter. The stealth field flickered as more enemy ships fired blind into the empty space, hoping to hit them by luck. Kane knew the cloak wouldn't hold forever. "Time for the big guns," like he said. The rail cannons roared again, this time firing at near point-blank range. The slugs tore through a battleship's shields and ripped its midsection apart in a single hit. The wreck drifted for only a moment before its reactor detonated, sending a wave of destruction that damaged 2 nearby frigates. "Multiple kills," Taurus reported, "but they're closing the gap again." The alien flagship entered the fray, a massive shape blotting out the stars. Its hull was layered with glowing shield grids, and its forward batteries lit up with enough power to tear the Aegis in half. Vigil's voice was almost grim. "Commander, that vessel is the largest in their fleet. Engaging it now will significantly reduce survival probability." "Then we make it quick," Kane replied. The Aegis accelerated toward the flagship, weaving between incoming fire. Gravity shear beams twisted space in their wake, throwing enemy shots wide. Micro-singularity torpedoes launched in quick succession, slamming into the flagship's shields and forcing them to flare and weaken. But the retaliation was brutal. A direct hit shook the entire ship, knocking Taurus to the floor and throwing sparks across the bridge. Smoke filled the air and the lights dimmed. "Portside armor is gone!" Varma shouted over the comm. "If we take another hit like that, we're venting half the ship into space." Kane's mind raced. "Vigil, tell me you have something that can finish this." "I do," the AI said, "but it has never been tested. The outcome is unpredictable." Kane didn't hesitate. "Do it." The Aegis's forward section split open, revealing a strange device that pulsed with deep blue light. Energy crackled across its surface, forming a spear-like beam that grew brighter and brighter. "Target locked," Vigil said. "Fire," Kane ordered. The beam shot forward, light slicing through the flagship's shields as if they were smoke. It carved straight into the hull, cutting deep until the massive vessel split apart. Explosions rippled through its length before the entire ship erupted in a blinding flash. Silence filled the bridge, broken only by the soft hum of the ship's systems. But outside, the alien fleet was still massive, and now every single one of them was turning toward the Aegis. The glow of the exploding flagship still burned in the viewport, but it did nothing to slow the rest of the armada. Dozens of ships moved into tighter formation, sealing every possible escape route. The space around the Aegis became a trap, lit by the charging weapons of an enemy determined to end the fight. Rios's voice was tense. "We're surrounded. No way out unless we punch straight through." Kane's eyes stayed locked on the tactical display. "Then we punch through. We'll use the blackout run." Taurus turned sharply in her chair. "Commander, that maneuver's suicidal. It was banned for a reason. Without shields, one wrong calculation and we'll be nothing but scrap." Vigil's voice was calm but edged with warning. "Probability of survival, 12%. "Better than 0, Kane replied. "Prep the ship." The blackout run had never been used in real combat. It relied on the stealth field being pushed far beyond safe limits, making the Aegis vanish from sensors entirely, but at the cost of almost all defensive systems. The ship would go dark, running silent through the middle of the enemy formation, and then strike from within before the enemy could respond. Varma's voice crackled over the comm from engineering. "If we push the stealth field that far, we'll lose power to half the life support and risk a total reactor collapse. I hope you're ready to ride the edge of an explosion." "Just keep the course stable until I tell you otherwise," Kane said. The crew worked in silence. Lights on the bridge dimmed to a deep red as power was rerouted. The steady hum of the ship grew quieter, replaced by a hollow stillness. Even the usual beeps and system pings stopped. It was like the Aegis was holding its breath. Blackout sequence initiated, Vigil reported. We are now invisible to their sensors for the moment. The tactical display showed the red icons of enemy ships moving, searching, firing blind shots into the dark. The Aegis slid forward slowly, slipping between two destroyers so close their hull lights flashed across the Aegis's plating. No one on the bridge spoke. Every creak of metal, every vibration in the deck felt deafening in the silence. Kane kept his eyes on the path ahead. The heart of the enemy formation loomed before them, a cluster of capital ships coordinating the assault. If they could destroy those, the rest of the armada might break. Taurus's fingers hovered over the weapons controls. We can't fire until we drop the stealth field. The moment we do, they'll see us. That's the point, Kane said. We hit them before they can hit back. Vigil's voice was low. We are within optimal range. Suggest immediate engagement. Do it, Kane ordered. The stealth field dropped in an instant. Power surged through the ship, lighting up every console. Rail cannons roared, firing at point-blank range into the side of a battleship. The slugs punched through its shields and detonated its core, the explosion rocking nearby vessels. Taurus fired a full spread of micro-singularity torpedoes into another capital ship. Its midsection collapsed inward before erupting in a chain of violent blasts. The sudden destruction threw the enemy formation into chaos. Two down, Taurus shouted, multiple ships pulling back, but the return fire was immediate and brutal. Plasma blasts and missile swarms rained down on the Aegis. The ship lurched violently as armor plating melted and bulkheads groaned. Deck 9 is gone. Varma's voice rang out. We've got fires in 3 compartments and power loss in the port engines. Rios, keep us moving, Kane barked. I'm trying, but we've got thrusters failing. Rios replied, wrestling with the controls. Kane turned to Vigil. Options? The AI didn't hesitate. Push reactor output to 120% for 20 seconds. It will give us the power to perform a high-velocity rotation and fire both rail cannons and torpedo bays simultaneously. Warning, there is a 47% chance the core will breach. Do it, Kane said without blinking. Varma shouted in protest over the comm. You're going to blow us all to hell. Not if we finish them first, Kane replied. The deck shook as the reactor roared beyond its limits. Heat alarms blared, and the air grew thick and hot. The Aegis spun sharply, lining up both cannons and torpedo bays on 2 separate targets. Fire! Kane ordered. The cannons and torpedoes unleashed together, a blinding storm of destruction. 2 enemy ships vanished in twin explosions, their wreckage tearing through nearby vessels. The chain reaction spread fast, knocking out weapons and scattering the fleet's formation. The reactor alarms screamed as the core temperature spiked. Shut it down, Kane barked. Varma slammed emergency controls. The lights flickered, the engines stuttered, and the ship's power dropped to critical levels. But the core stabilized, barely. The tactical display showed the enemy fleet in disarray. Ships were pulling back, their tight formation broken. The Aegis had carved a path straight through their heart, leaving burning wrecks in its wake. Rios exhaled shakily. We're still alive. Somehow. Not for long if we stay here, Kane said. Get us clear before they regroup. Vigil's voice carried a hint of satisfaction. Commander, their command structure has been severely disrupted. Victory may now be possible. Kane looked at the smoldering debris field ahead. Then we finish this. No running. The crew exchanged quick, determined glances. The blackout run had worked at a cost. The Aegis was battered, systems were failing, but the enemy's armada was bleeding. And now they were close enough to deliver the killing blow. The wreckage from the blackout run still drifted in the dark, glowing with dying fires, but there was no time to admire it. A deep vibration shook the deck as sensors picked up the arrival of a massive shadow. The alien flagship had entered the battle. It was bigger than anything the Aegis had faced, its black hull bristling with weapons, its shield grids pulsing with layers of protection. It moved like a predator, slow and deliberate, as if certain of victory. Rio stared at the display. That thing is a city with guns. Taurus's voice was tight. Our weapons barely dented their smaller ships. This one's going to be a nightmare. Vigil's voice was measured but grim. Analysis complete. This vessel's armor and shields surpass all others in the fleet. Probability of Aegis's survival after engagement, 0.3%. Kane didn't even flinch. Then we'll be the exception. The flagship began to fire before they even closed the distance. A beam of pure energy swept across space, scorching the side of the Aegis. Alarms screamed as armor plates melted like wax. Varma's voice cracked over the comm. That blast just tore through 2 decks. We can't take another hit like that. Then we don't get hit again, Kane said, gripping the armrests of his chair. Rios, bring us in close. I want to be under their big guns where they can't track us as easily. The Aegis surged forward, weaving between incoming fire. Gravity shear beams twisted the space around them, deflecting shots that would have ripped them apart. The flagship loomed larger and larger in the viewport until it blocked out the stars entirely. Targeting weak points, Vigil reported. Firing solution ready. Do it, Kane ordered. The rail cannons roared, slamming rounds into the flagship's shields. The energy barriers flared bright but held strong. Torres launched a spread of micro-singularity torpedoes, but they exploded against the shields without penetrating. They're too strong, Torres said through gritted teeth. Vigil's voice cut in. Commander, I have identified a flaw. The flagship's shields overlap at the forward command section, creating a brief fluctuation every 32 seconds. A precisely timed strike could disable them temporarily. How long is temporary? Kane asked. 7 seconds, Vigil replied. Kane looked at Torres. Can you hit them in 7 seconds? She smirked despite the tension. I'll do it in 5. They waited for the countdown. Rios kept the Aegis dancing between blasts, rolling hard to avoid incoming fire. Varma's voice shouted warnings as more systems overheated. Kane's eyes stayed on the timer. 3, 2, 1. Now, Vigil called. The Aegis's cannons and torpedoes fired together. The impact tore through the weak point, and for a brief moment, the flagship's shields collapsed in a ripple of failing energy. Hit them again, Kane shouted. The second volley slammed into the exposed hull, tearing massive holes in the flagship's forward section. Explosions lit the darkness, and chunks of armored plating spun away. But the retaliation was immediate. The flagship's side batteries opened up, pounding the Aegis with relentless fire. One blast sent the ship spinning, lights flickering and alarms howling. Starboard thrusters are gone, Rios yelled, fighting the controls. Reactor temperature critical, Varma shouted from engineering. If we push it any harder, we'll lose the core. Vigil spoke quickly. Commander, I can route all remaining power to weapons for one final strike. It will disable propulsion and most life support systems. After that, we will be unable to maneuver. Kane didn't hesitate. Do it. We're not here to run, we're here to win. The lights dimmed as the ship's remaining power was pulled into the weapons. The reactor's hum deepened into a steady, dangerous growl. Every panel on the bridge flickered under the strain. Taurus locked onto the flagship's command section. Target locked. Fire, Kane said. The Aegis unleashed everything. Rail cannon slugs tearing through what remained of the armor, torpedoes detonating deep inside the ship's guts, and gravity shear beams ripping chunks of metal away like paper. The flagship shuddered, massive explosions racing along its length. Then, in a blinding flash, its core went critical. The explosion tore the flagship apart, sending shockwaves through space. Debris slammed into nearby alien ships, destroying several outright and crippling others. The bridge of the Aegis was silent for a heartbeat, the crew staring at the destruction. Rios finally let out a breath. We actually did it. But Vigil's voice broke the moment. Multiple enemy ships still operational. They are regrouping. Kane leaned back in his chair, eyes hard. Then we keep going until there's nothing left to regroup. The Aegis, battered and barely holding together, turned its weapons toward the next closest target. The crew knew they were running out of time, power, and luck. But they also knew they had just killed the enemy's most powerful ship, something no one in the galaxy thought possible. And now, every alien captain left in the fleet knew one thing for certain. The humans weren't going to die quietly. The remains of the enemy flagship still floated in the void, glowing like embers in the dark. The destruction had shaken the entire armada, but they were far from defeated. Across the tactical display, dozens of red icons pulsed, marking the surviving alien ships. They were regrouping fast, their new formation tightening around the Aegis like a closing net. Vigil's voice was calm but sharp. Commander, remaining enemy vessels, 32. Many are damaged, but their numbers still give them overwhelming firepower. Estimated survival time, if engaged head-on, 4 minutes. Kane's eyes locked on the display. We won't survive head-on. We'll break them before they break us. Torres reloaded the torpedo bays, her hands moving with mechanical precision despite the sweat on her brow. We're low on ammo, Commander. 2 Singularity torpedoes left, maybe 6 full rail cannon shots. After that, we're throwing scrap metal at them. Varma's voice came in from engineering, strained and loud over the comms. Core temperature still in the red. We've lost cooling on the main conduits, and if we push the reactor again, I can't guarantee it won't blow. Kane spoke without hesitation. Hold it together, Chief. This ends here. The enemy formation split into 3 assault groups, one circling wide to flank, another pushing straight toward them, and the last hanging back to coordinate fire. Kane recognized the tactic. They were going to force the Aegis into a kill box. Rios, take us toward their center group, Kane ordered. Rios looked back in shock. That's suicide. We'll be in the middle of their fire arcs. Exactly, Kane said. They think we're desperate. Let's make them think they've won. The Aegis surged forward, its engines groaning under the strain. Enemy fire lit the darkness, beams and plasma bolts streaking past or glancing off the armored hull. The ship shuddered under each impact, sparks raining down from overloaded panels. Vigil called out, shields still offline, armor on the port side at critical levels. Recommend evasive action. Not yet, Kane said. As the Aegis closed the distance, the enemy ships moved to tighten the net, weapons locking on. That was when Kane gave the order. Vigil, full spread, every gun we've got. The bridge lit up as the Aegis unleashed its fury. Rail cannons spat hypervelocity slugs into the nearest destroyer, tearing it apart in seconds. Torpedoes screamed into another target, collapsing its hull inward before it vanished in a silent explosion. Gravity shear beams ripped the weapons off a third ship like they were being peeled away by invisible claws. 3 down, Torres shouted, but they're still coming. The retaliation was brutal. Multiple hits slammed into the Aegis, ripping away armor and blasting holes through the outer decks. Alarms blared in every corridor. Varma's voice came through the comms, breathless. Hull breach on deck 4. Sealing bulkheads, but we're losing pressure fast. Seal it and reroute power to the starboard engines, Kane ordered. We're going to cut through them before they box us in. Rios threw the ship into a hard roll, skimming dangerously close to an enemy frigate. The point defense guns shredded the frigate's engines as they passed, sending it spinning into the path of another alien vessel. The collision lit space with fire and debris. But the Aegis was bleeding. Power readings dipped, and the reactor's warning lights glowed an angry red. Commander, Vigil said, at our current rate of expenditure, we will be dead in 2 minutes. Kane's voice was hard as steel. Then we kill them in 1. He scanned the display, his eyes settling on the last assault group, the one hanging back. That was the coordination center, the fleet's brain. Without it, the other ships would lose formation and fight in chaos. Rios, take us straight to their command group, Kane said. Torres, save those last 2 torpedoes. They're for the biggest target. The Aegis tore through the enemy ranks, its weapons carving a path of destruction. The alien ships scrambled to block their advance, but the humans were relentless. One cruiser exploded under a rail cannon volley, another was gutted by gravity beams. Finally, the command group loomed ahead, 3 heavy cruisers guarding a massive fleet command ship. Its hull was covered in glowing alien symbols, its shield grid bright and strong. They see us, Torres said. They're charging everything they've got. Kane stood, leaning forward. Vigil, give me targeting data on their shield generators. Data locked, firing solution ready, Vigil replied. Fire the cannons, then the torpedoes, Kane ordered. The Aegis's rail cannons thundered, their shots slamming into the same section of the command ship's shields. The barrier flared, weakened, but held. Then Taurus launched the torpedoes. The twin black spheres streaked forward and struck dead center. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the shield collapsed, and the torpedoes burrowed into the hull before detonating. The command ship erupted from the inside, a chain reaction tearing it apart. The alien fleet immediately fell into disarray. Without their coordination hub, the remaining ships began moving erratically, some breaking off entirely, others firing wildly without formation. They're panicking, Rios said, disbelief in his voice. Good, Kane said. Let's finish them. The Aegis dove into the scattered enemy ranks. guns blazing. Every shot found its mark. Every pass left another enemy ship crippled or destroyed. The crew moved like a single machine. Rios weaving through debris, Taurus firing with deadly precision, Varma keeping the reactor alive by sheer will, and Vigil predicting enemy movements before they happened. One by one, the red icons on the display winked out. The last few enemy ships fled, their engines burning hard as they disappeared into the black. The bridge went quiet except for the soft hum of the remaining systems. Kane looked around at his crew, exhausted, battered, but alive. Vigil's voice broke the silence. Commander, the enemy fleet has been annihilated. There are no remaining threats in the sector. Rios leaned back in his chair, letting out a long breath. We, we actually won. Kane's gaze shifted to the viewport where the wreckage of the once mighty armada drifted silently. No, he said quietly, we survived. Now the galaxy knows what humans can do when we're cornered. The Aegis drifted slowly through the wreckage, its engines running low and its hull scarred from bow to stern. The battlefield was quiet now, only the silent glow of burning debris breaking the darkness. Bodies and twisted metal floated together in the void, reminders of the brutal fight that had just ended. Inside the ship, the crew worked in near silence. The adrenaline was gone, replaced by exhaustion. Sparks still fell from damaged panels, and the faint smell of smoke lingered in the recycled air. Rios sat slumped at navigation, his hands still on the controls but his eyes distant. Torres leaned back in her seat at weapons, breathing heavily, her fingers raw from gripping the firing systems for so long. Varma's voice came from engineering, softer now but still carrying a note of urgency. Reactor output is stable again, but half the conduits are fried. If we try to push her, she'll tear herself apart. Kane stood in the center of the bridge, looking out through the cracked viewport. His reflection was faint against the drifting wreckage outside. We're not pushing her anymore, he said quietly. We've done what we came to do. Vigil's voice was calm, almost respectful. Enemy forces are eliminated. All evacuation ships have cleared the sector. Civilian casualties, while significant, are far lower than projected. The words carried weight. Billions of people on Earth and in the colonies would live because of what they had done here. Kane let the silence stretch for a moment before he spoke again. Set course for Earth. Let's go home. The Aegis turned slowly, engines flaring just enough to push her away from the battlefield. As they moved, comms channels began to light up. Messages from surviving defense ships, from civilian transports, from planetary command. Cheers, sobbing voices, and stunned words of disbelief filled the bridge. Is it true? One commander asked over the comm. Did you really take out the whole armada? Kane didn't answer right away. He looked at the weary faces of his crew, then at the view of space behind them, now littered with the broken pride of the Empire. It's true, he finally said. By the time they reached Earth's orbit, the news had already spread across every channel. The Aegis was no longer a forgotten relic. It was a legend. Civilian ships gathered to escort them in, their lights flashing in salute. Broadcast drones hovered nearby, capturing every angle of the battered warship's return. The docking bay was packed when they landed. Mechanics rushed to the hull, medics boarded to treat the wounded, and soldiers stood at attention in tight lines. As Kane stepped down the ramp, the crowd erupted in cheers. Some shouted his name, others simply stared at the crew like they were something out of a storybook. Torres grinned despite her exhaustion, whispering to Rios, "Feels like we just walked out of a ghost story." Rios smirked. "Yeah, except we're the ghosts who killed an armada." Varma emerged from the ship last, wiping oil from her hands, and was immediately pulled into a hug by a group of mechanics who had once worked on the Aegis before it was abandoned. "Told you she was worth saving," Varma said with a tired smile. Kane was met by a senior officer from Earth's Defense Council, his uniform crisp but his eyes wide with awe. "Commander, the Empire won't forget this. They'll come back." "They'll think twice," Kane replied, "and next time we'll be ready." Later, in a private debrief, Kane listened as the Council discussed rebuilding the fleet, expanding defenses, and putting the Aegis back into full service. For the first time in decades, Earth wasn't just surviving, it was commanding respect. The recordings from the battle spread far beyond human space. The Empire's surviving scouts had fled and carried the story with them. Across alien channels, one phrase began to appear again and again. Do not provoke the humans. It was whispered in military briefings, discussed in merchant guilds, and passed in hushed tones among smugglers. The humans had destroyed the Empire's strongest fleet, with a ship their own leaders had once abandoned. In the weeks that followed, Kane and his crew became living legends. Songs were written, holovids recreated the battle in vivid detail, and children on distant colonies played games pretending to be the crew of the Aegis. But among the crew themselves, there was no sense of glory, only the knowledge of what it had cost. One evening, Kane stood alone in the lunar dock where they had first found the Aegis. The ship was there again, now surrounded by workers and engineers, her hull being repaired and polished. He placed his hand on the cold metal and whispered, "You were never just a relic, were you?" Vigil's voice came through the ship's external speakers, softer than usual. "No, Commander, I was waiting for the right hands to wake me." Kane smiled faintly. "And now that you're awake?" "Now," Vigil replied, "we prepare for what comes next." Above them, stars glittered against the black. Somewhere out there, the remnants of the Empire were plotting their revenge. But now the galaxy knew the truth. Earth was no longer a weak world at the edge of space. It had warriors, it had the Aegis, and if pushed again, it would fight with the same ferocity that had turned a forgotten prototype into the most feared ship in the stars.